I also think a lot about the Balkans, and I would guess that many of the military officers here served in the Balkans, in Kosovo and Bosnia. Just a month ago, I was with a superb French colonel who commands the battle group in the north of Kosovo. And I will tell you today, I am extremely positive and optimistic about the progress in Kosovo and in the Balkans in general. And if we all think back 10 years ago and remember the Balkans in the 1990s, where there was murder and borders violated, 8,000 men and boys were executed in Srebrenica in a day or two. Awful crime, extreme violence. That was 10 years ago. Today, Croatia is a top tourist destination. Today, we see the nations in the Balkans reaching not for guns and knives, but for the International Court of Justice to solve their border disputes. There is enormous progress in the Balkans, and NATO can be very proud of that. France can be very proud of that. This is a photograph of me on top of a tower in Gazmistan in Kosovo, overlooking a field where the Ottoman Empire fought the Balkan Serbs 800 years ago. Those times have changed. There will still be challenge in the Balkans, but there is great progress. Next, please. Russia. We all spend a lot of time thinking about Russia. This is, of course, the imperial symbol of the Russian Empire. It is duplicated on the flag of the Russian Federation. It has two heads, looking east and looking west. I think it is a good symbol because within the alliance, there are often two views of Russia. Some of the nations seek strong cooperation and coordination. Other nations are more concerned about Russian activity. I believe we must find zones of cooperation with Russia. The Secretary General agrees with that. It is clear to me that we cannot fall backwards into a Cold War mentality. We must move forward in positive relations with Russia. And there is a great deal that we can find cooperation with Russia upon, including counter-piracy, counter-terrorism, Afghanistan, where they have been cooperative in our logistics, sharing of intelligence, transparency in our exercises. There is a great deal that we can do, and we should move forward. Next, please. The internet. Admiral Guillot talked correctly about cyber. I believe this is a challenging area that, as an alliance, we must focus on. We must define our terminology. What is intelligence and the gathering of information in the cyber world? What is a probe to try and change something in the cyber world? What is the destruction of important capability? What constitutes an attack in an Article 5 sense? When should we consult in an Article 4 sense about cyber? We need to answer those questions as we go forward as an alliance. And I think that is a great part of the alliance of NATO after Afghanistan. Next, please. We should think about the threat of ballistic missiles and about ballistic missile defense. It will not surprise you to hear that I am an advocate of missile defense. I believe that the United States is moving forward with a missile defense system, which as an alliance, and I speak as an alliance officer, not as an American officer, I speak as an alliance officer. I think NATO should examine the offer of the United States very closely and consider it, because these missiles, this one, of course, is constructed in Iran, are improving. There is a search for weapons of mass destruction. In my view, this is a real threat, and we should protect the alliance, and thus we must think about whether missile defense makes sense or not. And it should be an alliance decision responding to the U.S. offer. And I think that process will unfold this year and will be part of a debate in NATO after Afghanistan, beyond Afghanistan. Next, please. Piracy. This is a growing threat. It is not just in the Horn of Africa. It impacts all of our maritime industries. It costs a great deal of money. Today, several hundred mariners are held hostage by pirates. France is doing terrific work in this area, one of the leading nations. We need to think about what is the alliance role in NATO, in the NATO role in piracy as we move forward. Because this, I believe, is a threat that is not going to disappear overnight. And we will not solve it at sea. In the end, the solutions are ashore. Next, please. Terrorism. This is an awful photograph. It was taken in the Moscow subway just a few weeks ago after the terrible bombings in the subway there. Terrorism is part of the fabric of security that we must deal with. It is not specifically a NATO task. Obviously, this particular type of incident is a law enforcement issue, but being aware of the larger global fabric of terrorism allows us to make decisions about where and when our alliance should be involved, as we are today in Afghanistan, where we fight so that terrorism cannot have a base of operations, a free base of operations in Afghanistan that leads to scenes like this in Moscow, in Madrid, in London, in New York. Next, please. Narcotics. Again, not a NATO task to solve, a law enforcement task. But it is worth understanding the impact of the flow of heroin which comes from Afghanistan and is distributed throughout Europe, passes on to the United States, and is causing, for example, in Russia, 30,000 deaths a year of young people between 18 and 24 years old, like this photograph. Again, NATO's role is not to stop the movement of narcotics, but perhaps the alliance has a role, not only in our larger efforts, for example, in Afghanistan, where by creating security and stability, we reduce narcotics as we have for 3 years. The poppy crops are declining in Afghanistan. Also, we may have a role supporting law enforcement with maritime domain awareness, with knowing what is moving on the sea. So there is a discussion here as we look forward in the alliance to the supporting role that we might play to the law enforcement efforts that deal with this problem. Next, please. Migration, a challenge. Again, not a NATO problem to solve, but are there ways in which we can use alliance capabilities to support domestic efforts to control illegal migration? Next, please. And the High North, not of enormous interest to France specifically, but in the High North, 4 NATO nations and Russia, the United States and Denmark and Norway, Canada and Russia. There is a zone in the High North where these will come together. We must ensure that that zone is one of cooperation, not of conflict, not of competition, but of cooperation. Next, please.